Hello and happy Teach Me Tuesday. My name is Lisa and I am an experienced NICU nurse and a NICU nurse educator here to give you another little taste of NICU education as we work through our various topics. This week it is the 5th Tuesday of April, and so to me that's bonus Tuesday. So I thought we would just do a kind of a mini micro. It's going to be shorter than last week because last week was 25 minutes, and so I thought we'd shorten it a little bit and talk about discharge from the NICU, what the requirements are, and how we can talk to parents about it. So we know that discharge is not like the end goal, right? It is. We want to get them out of here, but it's just part of that NICU journey. When they leave the NICU, they're not done doing all the things they need to do. They still go to follow-up appointments. They still are at home growing and gaining and learning together as a family. But our job is to support the baby and family dynamic so that they can be successful at home. We also have to support our parents through this journey because I assure you, one of the very first questions you will get as a NICU nurse is, when can my baby go home? And so today we're going to talk about how you can answer that and to empower you to have the knowledge to teach the parents. So discharge criteria. What does a baby have to do to go home from the NICU? This day and age, right, it's 2025. When I started my NICU career was 2004, so 21 years ago. We did tell parents like, oh, your baby needs to be 5 pounds, and we send babies home around their due date. But we don't really say that anymore because now we know that discharge is about readiness. Essentially, we are looking for 4 things, and we are going to dive into each of these. But what the baby's job is, so the baby has 4 jobs. That is to gain weight, to maintain their temperature in an open crib, to not have any apnea or bradycardia that requires stimulation, and to take all their feeds by mouth or have another alternate feeding plan. We do need them to be on a stable respiratory status, so that might be room air or might be home on some support such as low flow oxygen, even up to a trach. And then we need to have our follow-up plan and follow-up support. So let's go through each of those. One other thing I like to say is when a family asks me, when is my baby going to be ready to go home? I always respond with, tell me what your due date was. So, okay, your due date is, May 30th. You can expect that your baby will go home around May 30th. Some babies go home earlier and some babies go home later. The ones that are born earlier, closer to that 24, 23, 22 weeks, tend to go home after their due date. And the closer you are born towards your due date, the more likely you're going to go home near it. Then I remind them that the only person that gets to decide when the baby goes home is the baby. And we're going to surrender control to this little thing that's laying in an incubator or maybe in a crib or an open warmer. And we can't do anything except for support them through that. So we've surrendered this control and now we wait for the baby to do those 4 things. So let's break them down. So gaining weight. I always remind babies, this is the one time in your life that people want you to gain weight. Like, let's do this. So we may not require a certain weight. Yes, a baby does have to fit into a car seat, and car seats, only some of them go under 4 pounds. So in general, we kind of say a 4 poundish minimum, but I have sent babies home under 4 pounds. So it is not a hard and fast rule, but we want a pattern of growth. So we're going to be tailoring our feeds to each baby's needs. That's going to be calories, frequency, fortifiers, what we're putting in, how often they're breastfeeding versus bottles, what we might need to give them, such as 22 to 24 cal. I've sent a baby home on 30 cal before. So how many kcals per ounce does this baby need to eat to successfully gain and grow? And that also means, are they growing in their length and their head circumference? So once they are consistently gaining weight and they're doing all of these things, then we are already on our right track. So that's something. You see the baby in a crib, we're kind of getting this pattern. I say, okay, let's start watching for growth, because a baby could be doing the other 3 things that we're going to talk about and not gaining weight, and we won't discharge them from the NICU because we're worried about failure to thrive. So the checklist for this one would be confirming, that the parents know how to mix these formulas, watch them do some of these feedings to make sure that they are doing them in a timely manner, and then weighing the baby every day would be part of our checklist. So second thing we have to do is we have to maintain our temperature in an open crib. So this is one of those first things that I tell parents that they can really kind of watch for. We do not start the transition to an open crib until 16 to 1800 grams. And I know that there are NICUs out there that are waiting even longer, but evidence tells us we can go down and start the weaning to crib around 1600 grams. So keep that in mind. Once they're 1,600 grams, we're going to start weaning them. It doesn't mean like, oh, you're 1,601 today, let's take you out of that incubator. No, we're going to dress you. We're going to turn the incubator temperature down. We're going to put on another later. We're going to turn the incubator temperature down, right? It's a wean. Once they're in the crib, we want to make sure that they have a stable temperature for 24 to 48 hours. So if you're taking care of a baby and they are doing some PO feeds and they're not in a crib yet, we got to work on getting them to a crib because we know they could take off. So during this time, we're going to teach parents about our home thermoregulation strategies. I always say your baby should be wearing one more layer than you're wearing. So if you have on a sweater, they should be swaddled. If you have on a short sleeve shirt, they should have on like a onesie and a sleeper. That's the best way we know that we're keeping them warm. So our checklist for this area is going to be thermoregulation. What does safe sleep look like? We don't want to be putting them in tons of blankets. We want to be getting our positioning devices out so that we're modeling that for them. And what is their bed going to look like at home? And is their home ready temperature-wise? Number 3, the baby has to be free of apnea and bradycardia events that require stimulation primarily in their sleep, right? We know that some babies are going to have desaturations, maybe brief apnea during bottle feeding or breastfeeding, and so we teach parents how to pace around that. One thing to think about is this is a literal pathway in the brain that forms sometime around 34 to 36 weeks. If you're born early, it may form a little bit later, so we just don't know exactly, but again, that's another clue to the parents. Okay, around 34 to 36 weeks, this is another thing I can anticipate. If you're a Post-it girl like me, a checklist girl like me, you like to know what's coming next, this is one of those ways we can kind of ease some of their anxiety and be like, hey, your baby is 32 weeks and having apnea. We still expect that. We don't expect them to grow out of their apnea of prematurity until they're 34 to 36 weeks. Now we're getting there. Let's start weaning the caffeine. Caffeine has a really long half-life in babies. In neonates, it's up to 4.5 days. So we need to make sure we get that caffeine off and out of their system. They need to be free of apnea and bradycardia for anywhere from 4 to 5 days. Check your local hospital's policy on that, and then we would send them home. I have a lot of friends in my lifetime, little babies, that have decided on day 4 to have another apnea. So this is one of those things that can sometimes prolong them, and then sometimes we send them home on a monitor just in case. And then we also need to be monitoring them during sleep feeds and in their open crib. Okay, so the other thing a baby has to do is take all their food from breast or bottle or have another thing set up, such as an NG tube or G button. We don't expect babies to coordinate suck, swallow, and breathe until 34 weeks. So I have given you 3 verbal things that you can tell a parent. We do not start weaning to an open crib until they're a minimum of 1,600 to 1,800 grams. That might be one of our first milestones. We don't expect babies to outgrow of apnea prematurity until they're 34 to 36 weeks. That's another thing for you to look forward to. We don't expect them to be able to coordinate suck, swallow, breathe until around 34 weeks. Again, some babies might be a little bit earlier and some might be later. This is what we're watching for. Rooting, maintaining their oxygen saturations during feeds. Are they pausing their breathing? Do we need to teach you pacing, feeding cues, techniques for the breast and bottle? And these checklists, we want to make sure that we are educating them on feeding. If they're going home on a pump, how do you use that pump? How do we get the NG tube set up? How do you put the NG tube back in, depending on what your education is going to look like? So those 4 things, gaining and growing is going to happen right away, but we want them to continue to gain and grow after we are doing these other 3 things, right? We're making sure you're breathing well, which takes a lot of energy. We've put you in a crib, which takes energy, and we're feeding you, which takes energy. So if we've done all 3 of those and we're still able to gain weight, we are well on our path towards discharge. So what does parent education look like, right? Parent education should start on admission, as should the documentation in your electronic health record. Nothing is more infuriating as a bedside nurse than you come and it's your turn, you're discharging the baby, and no one's documented any discharge teaching. And you think to yourself, this baby's been here for 6 weeks. I'm sure someone has taught them something. So teaching them diapering, bathing, safe sleep, circumcision care, and documenting that when you do it. Feeding education, med administration. Most babies at the very least are going home on vitamins, so parents are probably giving 1 medication at the very least, so teaching them how to draw that up and give it to the baby. If they're going home on any equipment, training them on that, and then our emergency preparedness. Can they do CPR? Can they watch a CPR video? When do you call the pediatrician? When should you be concerned? What values are you looking for at home as far as temperature, heart rate, all of that goes? This is so important, and the importance of repetition and why we start so early. If the baby is weaning to a crib or is in a crib and there's nothing documented on your discharge checklist in your electronic health record, you're already behind. So make that your priority. You can teach them. I'm sure you've done a bath with them or you've changed a diaper. Show them how to use the bulb syringe. Talk to them about safe sleep at home. All of those are discharge educations that can be going on. So while that's happening, we're doing things. We have a checklist. So we talked about the 4 things the baby has to do. The things that the nurse has to do in conjunction with the family can feel very long, right? We need our newborn screen, our metabolic panel, our CCHD unless they've had an echo, ROP unless they're too old, hearing screen, a car seat trial, depending on what your unit is doing, what your protocol is on that. The AAP still recommends a car seat trial for all babies born less than 37 weeks. I know that there are units that are no longer doing that. In fact, the Canadian Academy of Pediatrics no longer recommends that, so more to come on that. We want to make sure our parents have demonstrated bottle prep, mixing formula, doing the feedings. I remember a mom of a baby who had been in the NICU for quite a while, was getting ready to go home, and I bet you do this, so I hope this is eye-opening for you. It was time for the baby to eat. We were handing her the bottle. We were cleaning the bottle. She never knew how to put a Dr. Brown's bottle together. And that one thing was just stressful to her. Like, I've never done this. So I now remember, like, oh, let's let them draw it up, pour it in, measure it out, get the bottle all put together, clean it, etc. It also helps them establish the routine, which is something we've talked about this month on social media about time management, and establishing this routine is going to be a big part of nursing, and it's helpful for parents as well. If they're going to mix the formula or putting additives into breast milk, depending on what they're going home on, new research tells us that if your baby's going home on a mix of breast milk and formula, that instead of doing what we call like the sprinkle feeds, where we put a little bit of HMF or infant milk powder into breast milk, they should just be doing a certain number of breast milk feeds a day and a certain number of formula feeds a day. So if your unit's not doing that, I encourage you to look into that. Doing some rooming in if possible, or at the very least being there for 3 to 4 feeds in a row, because we all know that sometimes one feed isn't as good as others. So, and then any sort of G button, NG, if the baby's going home with a G button or an NG, the parents should start doing that days ahead of time. So then we have our day of discharge checklist. What do we need to do and make sure that we're getting signed off? Is our breast milk picked up? Is our home oxygen delivered? Do we have our prescriptions there? Do we have our follow-up appointments? Whether that's simply the pediatrician or you're coming back for feeding therapy, you're going to go get your eyes checked again, whatever it might be, making sure all of that is scheduled. Making sure we review all of the education at the end, print that after visit summary, get it signed, review it with the caregivers. On my after visit summary in my electronic health record, you know how you can add attachments? I'm like the adder of all the attachments because it's more information for the parents when they go home, and it stays probably in your health systems online under the baby that the parents should have access to, so they can go back and refer to it. So if you put in there, feeding progression and how the baby should be doing over time, or the temperature at the house, and they don't quite remember, it's all there for them. I love it. And then get your signatures, check your licenses, remove your security band as the baby is going out, and be ready to go. So post-discharge support, this is a transition. Some of these babies may have been in the NICU for 2 days and go to the pediatrician and it was a blip in their life. Some of them might be there for almost a year. So making sure we know our scheduled follow-up appointments, our prescriptions, coordination with home health and early intervention, and then just setting these realistic expectations that this may be hard as the baby transitions home. I always think about that with parents, and especially we as NICU nurses are doers, right? We want to do things. We want to help with the temperature and the diaper, and now they're doing all of these things and maybe trying to pump at the same time, or they're alone, or they have other children at home. So just encouraging them to kind of let all the emotions that they're experiencing come and know that they are normal. So to recap, a safe, successful discharge is a team effort. We start on day 1, along with documenting on day 1. Babies must grow, breathe, eat, and stay warm, right? That's their job. Those are the 4 tasks a baby has to do. And then we as the NICU nurses are completing other tasks and working with the families for education, teaching, and setting them up for success at home. I hope you enjoyed these cute 3 little pictures. These are my 3 kids on their days of discharge. As you know, 1 did stay in the hospital for a period of time, and the other 2 were kind of your more typical. I will say I had no discharge teaching when I had a C-section and had my daughter, and I think they just thought because I was a NICU nurse I knew everything, and she never had a bath, and it was all very strange to me. So just something to think about. We all need teaching. But I hope you enjoyed this, and if you comment discharge on this, I will send you a discharge checklist that I made that you can have for reference. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next Tuesday for another round of Teach Me Tuesday.